Um, the Republicans have basically ramped up an outrageous anti-abortion lie ahead of Roe's demise. Last week during a hearing, the GOP demonized patients and doctors with QAnon-style conspiracy theories. It was only 1/2 hour. It was only like 1/2 hour into Wednesday's congressional hearing on abortion access when it became clear that the Republican contributions to the day would be fucking loonier than a QAnon message board itself. In places like Washington D.C., um, theories went around that fetuses um, were powering the world and the light of the city's homes and streets, claims Catherine Glenn Foster, which isn't true, but who had just minutes before sworn not to lie under oath, which she did when she mentioned about fetuses powering up the lamps on the city's streets and homes, and which, that, like I said, isn't true. The GOP summoned witness let loose the wild and utterly false accusations that municipal electrical companies are powered by incinerated fetuses, which like I said, is a lie. Now, the next time you turn Basically, she said the next time you turn on the light, think of the incinerator. She said, apparently repeating a misleading talking point from the same anti-choice activist called stashing fetuses at home. Everything on the Republican side is psychological projection. So that's where Republicans are these days, arguing that we live in a janky version of the Matrix, except powered by fetuses instead of actual people. And Foster is not some random nutcase that Republicans pulled up at a soapbox at a subway station minutes before before the hearing started. She is a Georgetown Law School graduate, um, who was paid $190,000 a year to be the president of the Americans United for Life, one of the largest anti-abortion nonprofits in the country. So it's not fucking surprising that Foster believed that she would get away with this absurd nonsense. Now hers was merely one of a truly overwhelming number of lies that poured out of the Republican lawmakers and witnesses alike throughout the course of Wednesday's hearing. When lies are coming out like chocolates on a conveyor belt aimed at Lucille Ball, the liars can be assured that they're overwhelmed, that the fact checkers beyond any hope of accountability, or that they basically believe that they overwhelmed the fact checkers, basically. But the GOP contributions to the hearing was nothing more than a blizzard of fucking bullshit that was meant to totally white out the efforts by Democrats and reproductive rights activists to remind the public of the great human cost that results from banning abortion. Now, Republicans pretended progressives don't know what a woman is, but they do. They insisted that the mere existence of abortion shows that birth control efforts are useless. On the contrary, the abortion rate has gone down as access to birth control has improved. Now, they pretended over and over that the issue at hand was only late-term abortions. In reality, the abortion bans past start at 2 weeks after a missed period, if not sooner. And then there was the repulsive contributions of Representative Mike Johnson of Louisiana, who pretended that women wait until they go into labor and then abort the pregnancy right before the baby is born. Having made this lie up on the spot, he then berated respected Alabama-based OB/GYN Dr. Yashika Robinson for the existence of a procedure that quite literally only happens in his bizarre fantasy world. Now here's a little clip in some again that they put out there. Basically, Johnson was asking Robinson, "Do you support the right of a woman who is just seconds away from birthing um, a healthy child to have an abortion?" And basically, she responded that I think that the question that you're asking does not realistically reflect abortion care. Basically, he says, in that scenario, would you support her right to abort that child? She says, I won't entertain theoretical, and he claims it wasn't a theoretical. Yes, it was, because he's asking a theoretical question that basically can't happen. Indeed, it is not indeed, it is not theoretical. It is entirely fantastical. Johnson's showboating was the equivalent of berating a doctor over unicorn horn removal surgery. But Johnson, who was eager to talk about anything but the realities of abortion care, continued to play the stupid fucking game. He went on to insist that Robinson answer for killing a baby halfway out of the birth canal, forcing her to pointedly remind him that actual murder is already illegal. Anti-choicers love this hypothetical of a woman who aborts during labor. In reality, it makes about as much sense as banning men from touching their penises out of fear one day that it might be cut off. But of course, Republicans would rather talk about their lurid fantasy lives than the reality of abortion. Um, in the aftermath of the leaked draft opinion that indicates that the Supreme Court will be overturning Roe v. Wade, In a few short weeks, the grim reality of what banning abortion means is just starting to dawn on the larger public. Poverty, child abuse, derailed lives, women trapped in abusive relationships, people mutilated or killed in an attempted self-abortions, people being imprisoned for trying to get abortions, and even just a looming anxiety hovering over every sexual encounter. And this is what the GOP wants to inflict on Americans, and it's not exactly the best popular politics as of right now. Sadly, there's nothing surprising about this turn towards wild tales about the fetus-powered street lamps and women demanding abortions during labor, as their actual political views become harder to defend on the merits. Republicans increasingly embrace conspiracy theories and urban legends to justify the unjustifiable. Now, they want to ban school children from reading about Martin Luther King. Just falsely claim that something called critical race theory is being taught to school kids and use this as a fucking cover. Want to deny trans kids the right to be treated with dignity in public schools? Roll out some wild story about how kids are now identifying themselves as kids and using litter boxes in school. Want to rile up the GOP going into the midterms? Screw making any substantive arguments. Just claim that Democrats are conspiring to replace white Christians with people of different races and ethnicities. A conspiracy theory lifted directly from the neo-Nazis with the details barely tweaked before being repeated 100 times on faux news. In the course, in the latter case, the cost is being paid in blood. We've seen repeated mass murderers as a result of this. This grace replacement theory, with the latest in Buffalo, New York, and this points to another, even darker purpose of the Republican reliance on urban legends instead of evidence, dehumanizing the targets of their sadistic political views. Lately, Republicans have accused their political opponents of grooming children, which is basically just a way of saying that all Democrats are pedophiles, and when in reality, it's the Republicans. It's an ideal directly borrowed from QAnon, just like the Great Replacement is borrowed from white supremacist groups. The purpose of this kind of rhetoric is to paint your opponents, or in many cases your actual targets, as subhuman and therefore deserving of any abuse you dish out, including fucking violence. Now, indeed, it's arguable that the abortion debate is how conservatives hone the art of spooling out monstrous false accusations in order to dehumanize their opponents. Falsely accusing doctors and abortion patients of murder has been standard conservative rhetoric for decades, and the human cost has been staggering. Assassinations of doctors, the bombing of clinics, and mass shootings of patients, and yet Republicans never let up, because despite claiming to be pro-life, they can always be counted on to prioritize political point scoring over actual human life. So yes, laugh at the weird anti-choice lady raving during a congressional hearing about fetus-powered street lamps, but remember the almost unfathomably deep cynicism that fuels such lies. Republicans are determined to set back women's rights by decades, punish people for having sex, and prop up racial inequalities. They frankly do not give a shit about how many lives are ruined or lost in the process, and they don't care about how stupid they sound when they roll out urban legends, so as long as they finish the sadistic task of making unwanted children mandatory across much, if not all, of the United States. So if you like the video, give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. Also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just as little as a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.